Hello again, feral friends and fellow nature nerds. Thank you for tuning in to Dirt Dispatch number 21. I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara. So I don't have a whole lot to talk about this week. I was talking to my neighbor the other day, and I didn't realize that she didn't know that deer shed their antlers. And so we got to talking about deer antlers. Now, if you didn't know, deer shed their antlers. Usually about this time of year, December, January. So in the fall, they rut and they mate. And then after that, they don't need their antlers anymore, because mostly antlers are for pushing around other males to try and get access to a female. So their testosterone level drops and it causes their antlers to shed. Now in the spring, they'll regrow, and antlers are one of the fastest growing tissues in the animal kingdom. They'll grow about an inch a day for 2 or 3 months, which is just amazing. And they'll be covered in this tissue. It's called velvet. It's very soft. It feels like velvet. It's got a lot of blood vessels in it, so it gets at the nutrients that it requires, and they grow very quickly. And then that velvet eventually will shed, and so sometimes you'll see deer, you'll see bucks that have the velvet kind of hanging off, and it looks very kind of gory and stringy, but that's just the velvet shedding. So when they do shed, a lot of people go out what they call shed hunting. They go out looking for these shed antlers, whether it's moose or elk or deer. So just to be aware, depending on where you live, there might be regulations on shed hunting. You might actually need a permit to do it. Here in Wyoming, if you're a Wyoming resident, you don't need a permit to go shed hunting, but there are certain times of year when you can and can't go shed hunting. So this time of year, you are not permitted in certain areas to hunt for sheds, and that's to protect the wintering habitat, primarily of elk. So there's certain parts of the state where shed hunting is off limits until sometime in the late spring. Now here on base, there was also a question on one of the social media pages about our pronghorn. Somebody said, what happened to all the pronghorn? Where's our pronghorn? Did Fish and Game round them up in order to get some genetic diversity in there? And it kind of gave me a chuckle, because no, Fish and Game is not going to round up pronghorn. They're the fastest land animal in the North America. So that would be very difficult, be a very difficult job to try and round up and herd pronghorn. But during this time of year, what the pronghorn do is they form mixed sex herds. So the reason people aren't seeing them maybe as much is because they're in a bigger group, and they're in a more isolated space. Although the very day that I saw that posted, they were surrounding my house here. We had probably 24 of them, and they were all around the house. And of course, I'm out during the winter, out riding my bike and out hiking and doing whatever. So I see them quite a bit more than other people do that maybe don't get out as much as I do and aren't in some of the more remote places that I'm in. Now, pronghorn don't have antlers. They have horns. They're pronghorn. And the difference, if you're not aware of the difference between horns and antlers are made of bone. The antler itself is bone growing out of the skull. Now, horns have bone underneath them, but they have what's called a horn sheath. So there's a core of bone that you would never see, and over the top of that is specialized hairs. They're very thick, it's keratin, so it's kind of like your fingernails, and that covers that bone core. Now, pronghorn are interesting because they are the only horned animal that regularly sheds that horn sheath. So annually, just like deer shed their antlers, they shed that horn sheath, and a new one has grown in underneath, and they will shed that outer one. So when you find them, they're actually hollow. So you'll pick them up and you'll see that you can kind of see the rough edge around the bottom where the hairs are, and you'll see that they're hollow and they fit over the core of bone. And I actually have a male pronghorn skull here that in my office that I use for programs, and you can see those bone cores, and And then I have some sheds that I found. Then you can see how it goes over the top. So it's pretty cool stuff. Now, the other thing I saw today when I was out riding my fat bike in our fresh inch or two of snow here, I saw coyote tracks, and that was rather fortuitous. I followed them for quite a ways. I didn't see the coyote itself, but I did see the tracks, and I could tell that they were not fox tracks, because fox tracks are much smaller, and fox tend to walk in a straight line. Their feet line up, and their back foot sets directly into the print where the front foot was. So it's a very distinctive kind of pattern, and this did not match that. First of all, they were bigger, and second of all, they were more spaced out side to side. And of course, if it was somebody walking a dog, there would have been human tracks there, and it wasn't, and it was far enough from housing that I doubt it was a dog running loose. So I'm 99.9% sure that what I was following were coyote tracks. And that's rather fortuitous, because coming up in just a couple of days, on January 31st, which is Friday, 2 days after this podcast is going to be published, I will be hosting the first final Feral Friday webinar. And that's going to be at 11 o'clock Mountain Time. So 10 o'clock in the West, 1 o'clock Eastern, noon Central. All you have to do to register is, first of all, just send me an email. Tell me you want the link, and you want to join in. And then I'm asking if you would PayPal me $5 or Cash App me $5. Not trying to get rich off this. I just want to cover the cost of my Zoom membership and have a little fun. So my PayPal address is my email address. That's dispatchesfromtheforest@gmail.com. Or on Cash App, you can use the hashtag ForestNerd. The other way to get the link is to become a patron. And of course, you can do that by going to patreon.com/dispatches from the forest. And anybody who's a patron at any of the paid levels will get the link to the webinar, and anyone who registers will get the link to the recording of the webinar. So even if you can't join me live on Friday, just send me an email, say, hey, I'm not going to be able to be there live, but I'd love to watch it afterwards, and I'll get the link out to you. Other ways to support the podcast: you can send me an email just to let me know that you're enjoying it, or if you have a question or a comment or a suggestion for a future episode. You can do that. Again, dispatchesfromtheforest@gmail.com. You can become a patron. You can donate money to me. I'm always accepting donations. You can check out the merch store. You can find that at cafepress.com/shop/dispatches from the forest. And then click on products and you'll see everything that there is to offer. You can also follow me on Facebook, on Instagram, and on TikTok. Only thing left to say, I'm your host, Tim the Nature Nerd O'Hara, reminding you to go outside and get dirty. Dirt Dispatches is a production of Dispatches from the Forest and may not be used or rebroadcast whole or in part without express written permission.